Hi everyone, how's everyone doing? I hope you're all well. Now, before we kick off with this webinar session, if anybody's having any sort of technical challenges in viewing or hearing this webinar session because we are live, then what I'd highly recommend is to go through the usual, kind of troubleshooting that we all tend to go through if something technology related doesn't work for us first time around. So if you are tuning in on perhaps a desktop or a laptop computer, feel free just to hit the refresh button on your web browser page. Alternatively, if you are tuning in via a mobile device, feel free to come out of the YouTube app and then click back on the link that you received for this webinar session, and hopefully everything should be working for you. Please also feel free to grab yourself a pen and a paper, just so you can kind of jot down some notes as we go along throughout the course of this session, because this session is going to very much be kind of activity related and kind of activity geared. So it's going to be very kind of hands-on and kind of practical in that aspect. So feel free to have a pen and paper on hand throughout the course of this session. Now, with this session, live captioning is available. So if you wish to toggle that on throughout the course of this live webinar session, feel free to do so. If you hover over onto this video, you'll see that there is an icon that you'll find, which is the letters CC inside of a small rectangular box. That is the icon for you to turn on live captioning if you wish to use that functionality. Okay, so I hope everybody's geared up and ready for this session. So welcome to this Google Digital Garage webinar session, all about how to find your balance with technology. Crucial word being your, and that's something that we're going to be revisiting throughout the course of this session. My name's Rikesh, and I'm going to be your presenter, taking you through the course of this session, which is going to last for approximately 60 minutes. So I'll kick off first with a little bit about me. So I am a trainer for Google's digital skills program, Google Digital Garage. As well as that, I'm also a digital marketer. So I work with businesses to help them to create and to grow an online presence in order to kind of get more customers and clients respectively interested in what that business has got to kind of say and ultimately what they've got to sell, whether it be a product and or service. So with that in mind, in terms of what I do, I tend to spend probably more than the average person with technology. I tend to spend a lot of time on the devices that I have, whether that be a laptop, whether that be a tablet, whether that be a smartphone. I do tend to spend a lot of time on my devices. And it's very important. It's something which, for me, especially kind of probably last kind of 3 or 4 years now, I've been rather conscious about how long I'm spending on screens, because I'm doing that quite a lot for the work that I do and the industry that I work in. I want to also be conscious about the time that I get away from the screen as well, just to kind of find my balance with technology, which is what we're going to be kind of discussing in today's session. So that's just a little bit about me. And now I'd also like to introduce to you my colleague and fellow Google Digital Garage trainer, and that is Rashane. Now, Rashane is going to be our chat moderator. So whilst you won't see Rashane on screen, you will see Rashane appearing in the live chat, which should be located somewhere on the right-hand side of your screen. Now, this is your space because we are live in this webinar session to get involved. I'd love to kind of hear some of your answers to questions that you'll see pop up on screen, as well as you jotting them down, because I think it's really important to write them down. And this is the reason why I mentioned at the very outset of this webinar session to grab yourself a pen, grab yourself some paper, just to kind of write that down, rather than kind of using a note-taking device, which I guess we could easily do. Just open up kind of the notes app that we have on our smartphones. Just kind of have that pen and paper aspect, that kind of more manual method, I guess, and kind of jot down notes as we go along. But feel free to also share some of your thoughts as well, because this is kind of one of those unique webinars that we tend to run, which we all have some experience that we can bring to the table in terms of how we use our technology devices and what we found to be the right balance for us, or do we feel out of control of some devices? How can we rein things in as well? What we found that's worked for us, what's not working for us, all these kind of different variables, and we can bring them to the table. So feel free to use that live chat in order to type away going forward as well. We've got Sephora who's tuning in from Canada, so welcome to you, Sephora. Hope that you find this this session useful. And feel free to also ask questions as we go along. And I'm sure that myself and Roshane will be able to provide our thoughts in terms of our experiences when it comes to kind of finding our balance with technology as well. Now, this session that we're running today on Find Your Balance with Technology is one of many webinars that we actually run as part of a wider Google Digital Garage webinar offering. So if you have a look down below me where I'm pointing, you'll see that there is a video description box. Contained within the video description box is a link to the Google Digital Garage website, which many of you would typically have used to actually sign up for this session. So definitely check out the live training tab where you can sign up and have a look at other webinars that are available. Predominantly, the webinars that we do tend to run focus on the world of digital marketing, but we also have a lot of kind of career-based webinars that we run related to kind of CV and building CVs and writing cover letters, as well as finding your career goals as well. And these webinar sessions, just like this session, is available for you to attend at no charge. So definitely kind of check that out when you do get a moment. And also on the live training tab, for those of you who are tuning in from the UK, which is where I'm based, feel free to also have a look on the live training tab for any kind of upcoming face-to-face in-person events that we do have as well that might be of use for you. And again, these are available for you to attend at no charge as well. So definitely kind of check out all those resources. Check out the online courses section of the Google Digital Garage website, where you'll see a list of lots of different courses that you can complete in your own time at your own pace as well. There is a course on there in particular, which is accredited, which is called the Fundamentals of Digital Marketing course, which at the end of the course, you'll actually receive a certificate from Google at no charge, recognizing that you've completed the Fundamentals of Digital Marketing course as well. And I'm sure you find other fantastic resources across the Google Digital Garage website as well. But without further ado, let's have a look at what we're covering in this session, all about how you can find your balance with technology. So the way that we're going to be kind of breaking down this session is we're first of all, just briefly going to be identifying and understanding what do we mean by a term called digital well-being. Now, you may or may not have heard of this term or phrase before. You might have heard of it with different terminology. So we're just going to be, first of all, identifying that, because that is very much at the root of what this webinar session is all about. Now, once we've defined what we mean by digital well-being, we want to kind of press ahead and look at, well, how can we get that digital well-being for us? So we're going to be looking at what does the right sort of balance mean for us. So this is going to be very much kind of individualistic. So this is why I mentioned grab yourself a pen, grab yourself some paper, just so you can kind of jot down some notes in terms of some of the questions that you will see appearing in this section. Now, once we've looked at kind of what kind of balance means for us, we're then going to be looking at, well, out of all these things that we're looking to kind of improve, out of all these things that we're looking to get out of having a balanced relationship with technology for us, what are some of the tips and tools out there that can help us to strike that right sort of balance? So we'll be going through some of the tips and tools. And again, feel free to jot some of these down. You might just kind of think, oh, maybe I'll just select one or two of these. Because if you kind of think, oh, I'm going to adopt all of these tips and tools, then it might just be too much all at once. So even if you pick up just kind of a handful of some of these tips and tools by the end of this session, these are kind of tips and tools will be useful kind of going ahead when you go ahead to kind of apply these tips and tools, which is going to kind of round off our session, because it's all good and well understanding and kind of coming to webinars like this where, kind of trainers like myself come and tell you, right, these are some of the tips and tools to help you to strike a balance with technology for yourself. But we want to put it in action. And that's where we're going to be kind of looking at kind of applying these tips and tools in the final part of this session. Because once we kind of apply these tips and tools and we do them on a regular basis, we will then turn these tips and tools into healthy habits. Which is something that we will end up doing on a regular basis, and it will eventually just become second nature to us going forward as well. So with that in mind, let's actually kick off with the first part of this session, which is all about kind of understanding what is digital well-being. So before I kind of show you and reveal to you, I guess, the definition of digital well-being, let me just take out the word digital for a moment. And if I take out the word digital, the question on screen would then be, what is well-being? What is the definition of well-being? So there's lots of different kind of definitions of well-being. Now, one of the definitions of well-being is that well-being is being in a state of being comfortable, healthy, and happy. Very simple. It's a very simple definition. So bear that one definition in mind, because now if we put the digital back into that phrase there, digital well-being is being in a state of being comfortable and content with how technology fits into your life. So that is what digital well-being is all about. So you can see that there's a slight alteration. Obviously, it's more kind of tailored and geared towards technology, because that is kind of why we've got the word digital there as well. But digital well-being, as you can see here on screen, is different for everyone. Hence why I kind of kicked off this section and said, find your balance with technology there as well, because this is going to be different for everybody who is tuned in for this session today. And you can see digital well-being is the result of feeling aware and in control of your technology use. And we'll kind of scratch beneath the surface with that particular sentence as we progress throughout the course of this session, especially become not just kind of awareness, because a lot of the times awareness kind of comes from you kind of feeling, oh, yeah, maybe I want to take back control. Maybe I want to make sure that I've got enough time in the day to do what I need to do. Maybe it's a case of I need to tune into a webinar session like I'm doing right now, which is all about how to find my balance with technology, and also being in control of technology rather than kind of technology kind of controlling our usage. We want to actually make sure that we are in charge, which we'll kind of come on to and explore throughout the course of this session. So when it comes to digital well-being, we want to make sure that we are having a balanced relationship with technology. So it's not a case of thinking about digital well-being and thinking, right, okay, well, that's it. I need to shut down my laptop. I need to close down my tablet. I need to switch off my smartphone, and that's it, and not be using any of those devices and any other kind of digital devices out there, just to ensure that I've got digital well-being. Because as we all are aware of, these devices that we use predominantly on a daily basis, a lot of the times, are useful in our day-to-day lives. They help us with different aspects, not just with work, but also our personal lives as well. They are very, very useful. So we want to make sure we're kind of striking the right balance between using these devices, using the technology that is available out there, and making sure that we're also making time for kind of the offline part of our life as well, which is going to kind of give us that kind of more even balancing going forward as well. So now that we looked at kind of what we mean by digital well-being, which is where kind of the ultimate state that we want to get to for ourselves, we want to kind of look at, well, what does balance mean for you? So with that in mind, I want us to kind of reflect upon our relationship with our devices. So if you haven't already, grab yourself a pen, grab yourself some paper, because we're going to be kind of looking at some questions that I want you to really think about and kind of jot down your answers to, and let me know your answers in the chat as well as we go along. So the first question I want to kind of ask you here is, what do you use your devices for? Now, what I want to do is, because that question on screen can seem quite sort of broad, and you might think, well, okay, let's first of all think about what devices have I got? Have I got 3 devices, 4 devices, 2 devices? Let's just kind of narrow that down to what is kind of perceived nowadays as to be our kind of primary device, which is typically our smartphone, because we can do a lot of different things from our smartphone. So what I want you to do is jot down, what do you use your smartphone for? And just to kind of make things a little bit more kind of condensed as well with this question, is think about, what have you used your smartphone for in the last 24 hours? So I want you to jot that down. I'm sure you'll have a long list. So just kind of jot that down, everything that you've used it for. I mean, if you wish to, if it kind of helps and provided that you're not tuning in onto this webinar session using your smartphone, that is, feel free just to kind of have a look at some of the apps, and you might have kind of a frequently used apps kind of section that will kind of give you pointers on, oh yeah, I use this app, I use that app. So just kind of make a long list of what you've used recently in terms of your smartphone of the last kind of 24 hours. So for me, what I've used it for, I've used my smartphone in the last 24 hours as an alarm. I've used it for driving directions. I've used it for purposes of kind of using kind of notes when I'm kind of working out at the gym. So I've used it for kind of multiple different purposes. So you'll have quite kind of a list. You'll have quite a long list of what you use your devices for first and foremost. So I hope that you've kind of got some kind of list kind of going. Feel free to kind of continue this after we've concluded this session as well, because I'm sure there will be other things that kind of spring to your mind, to the top of your mind, that you might think, oh yeah, I've also used my smartphone for this over the last 24 hours as well. You might have used it as a torch, even kind of more kind of, I guess, the unconventional kind of aspects as well. So that's kind of a few things to kind of think about there as well. And we can even kind of use some more kind of clarifying questions that you can see here on screen. So what do you spend a lot of time doing? What have you spent a lot of time doing on your smartphone in the last 24 hours? And if you're struggling with that question, you can use kind of the contrasting question of what do I spend, what do you spend very little time doing on your device, and that will kind of give you that kind of clarity through kind of contrast there as well. So that's kind of the first question here. What do you use your device for? Feel free to, again, share these in the chat. But what I want to actually do is take this a step further and let me know your answers to this question, which I'll show you on screen now, which is, when does this technology add the most value to your life? So have a look at that list of things that you use your smartphone for in the last 24 hours and think about, when has using your smartphone for these specific kind of apps or these specific tasks that you carried out using that device, when has it actually added value to your life? So feel free to kind of have a think about this, and feel free to kind of let me know your thoughts in the chat as well. So just got a comment here from Cornelius, who's mentioned, I use mine to browse YouTube and Google random things. Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of and also yeah. So you've also kind of mentioned that as well. I think that's important to mention that you've done these things. So think about whether, you know, browsing YouTube and kind of Googling random things, Cornelius, whether that actually adds value to your life. And think about all these other different aspects. So for example, for me, when it comes to kind of, I use kind of the note-taking app, a combination of the note-taking app, but also a fitness app to work out to when I'm at the gym. That's something which actually adds value to my life, because that helps with my health and kind of keeping in shape. And I've got a structure when I go to the gym. So that's something that's actually added kind of value to my life. It's a case of also I've spoken to family members who are on the other side of the world, or even in this country. You know, I've got a little niece who I tend to kind of speak to on a daily basis, and that's something which adds value to my life, because I'm able to keep in contact with my niece, who is kind of hundreds of miles away, which otherwise I wouldn't have been able to kind of keep in touch with. I'm sure even during kind of the few years that we've had, you know, using video calling platforms have kind of added a lot of value to our lives in general, to kind of keep in touch with friends and family alike in general as well. So think about, when does technology add value to our life, especially with that list that we've written down? Because what you'll also find in that list is the answer to this question, which is, when does technology add the least value to your life as well? So have a think about kind of that list again. Reflect upon that list that you've written down of what you've done on your smartphone in the last 24 hours. and think about what is not really adding much value to your life. Is it the case of that you get notifications through whilst you're reading? What is it that's kind of, and that's maybe kind of detracted from you kind of having a natural rhythm when you're reading a book, perhaps. It could be the fact that you were mindlessly, if I can say that, mindlessly scrolling through some of your social media apps, just kind of having a scroll, having a browse through your timeline and your news feed, when really you should have been kind of maybe spending a little bit more time having conversations with maybe the people that you live with the big friends and family alike as well. Or is it the fact that technology kind of adds the least amount of value to your life when you are kind of playing long sessions of online video games? Do you feel that that's kind of adding least value to your life? Now, you might kind of look at it on the flip side. You might think, well, you know, playing online video games is something which I do for a set period of time, and that's kind of great for me just to kind of unwind at the end of the day. And you might think, oh, that actually does add value to my life. So you can see how this session, kind of finding your balance with technology is very much kind of subjective, because what I might think is something which adds the least amount of value to my life with a particular technology use, you might think the opposite, and kind of vice versa as well. So it's important to kind of think of these kind of different aspects as well. And you might kind of find kind of a trend and a commonality with these kind of different traits and these different things that don't add the best kind of type of value to your life going forward as well. So with that in mind, what I do want to share now is I actually want to share with you just some kind of findings in terms of when technology, first of all, adds the most amount of value to your life. And that is through kind of the Pew Research Center findings, where they kind of they spoke to a select number of individuals. So this is very much kind of proportionately based. But what they found is these kind of 4 boxes. So you can see that technology adds the most value to individuals when it comes to staying connected. So things like messaging, video calls, taking photos, sending those photos as well, staying connected with loved ones, something which I'm sure many of us have kind of reflected upon over the last couple of years as well, and being kind of rather grateful for kind of the technology that's been available out there. Now, you've also got self-improvement as well. So things such as using kind of technology. So to think about kind of reading ebooks as well. We can use our devices to read books. So rather than kind of, if we go away on holiday and we sit on a beach, rather than having to kind of pack like 10 different books with us, we can just have them on one of our devices, and it's just right there in the palm of our hands pretty much as well. We're able to kind of listen to music. It might be inspiration music. It might be music that helps us kind of focus and do some quality kind of work as well. It might be the fact that, you know, I mentioned kind of things like kind of fitness apps, or kind of we might kind of jump onto something like YouTube and find a workout that we can do very quickly as well. It might be thinking about some of the mindful meditation apps that are out there as well, just to kind of calm us down. So that's kind of where technology can add the most value to us as well. And again, this is subjective, but this is something which has been found kind of through kind of speaking to a pool of individuals in general as well. You can see here, like kind of gaining knowledge, so educational content. You know, many of us do tend to kind of use various platforms and kind of use the internet to kind of learn new information, especially whereby nowadays we don't necessarily need, in order to learn something new, we don't necessarily have to go through the traditional means of kind of academic study. We don't have to kind of go to school, college, university. We can actually learn and kind of gain knowledge about a particular topic through kind of more unconventional means, and kind of finding out this information online as well. And then you can also see kind of technology adds value through kind of productivity. So you can schedule out your week. So we're on Monday right now, or if you're tuned in a country that's maybe a little bit further ahead time-wise to the UK, then you might be in Tuesday, but you can actually plan out kind of the rest of your week for your calendar. You've got kind of reminders as well, and then you've also got kind of emails, so you can kind of keep on top of what's coming through to you in terms of work and even kind of personal life as well, and stay very organized. So that's what kind of the Pew Research Center findings found in terms of where technology adds the most value to us. Now, on the flip side, what the findings kind of showed here in terms of where technology, you can see here it says where technology can go wrong. It's kind of where we're kind of rephrasing this to where technology adds the least amount of value to us, or very minimal amount of value to us. So one of them is pretty much where we're not intentional with our time. So you can see here, if we're kind of spending more time than we intended on social media, YouTube, because YouTube is a social media platform as well, or we're spending a lot of time online gaming when we probably should be spending a little bit more time kind of learning a little bit more about the job role that we're in, or certain other tasks, or something that can help to further our knowledge on something that might be useful in the future as well. Technology also kind of adds least value when we let it disrupt our sleep as well. I know I kind of have got into a habit. Well, I did get into a habit, and then I kind of came out of that habit, and now slowly kind of slipped back into it, whereby when I charge my phone at night, I have it right next to my pillow. And then I got to the point where, right, let me change that habit. And I did it bit by bit, and it got to the stage where it became quite habitual, whereby I actually put my charger and put my phone on the other side of the bed, on a table, so that if I did want to reach my phone, I actually physically have to get up and then climb over and actually reach it myself. But now I've kind of let it slip back into kind of just having it beside my pillow on the bed as well. And that's something which can disrupt your sleep as well. And we'll speak about how even if we kind of have those kind of scenarios, how we can make sure that we're still able to kind of get on uninterrupted sleep going forward as well. We can also see that technology can not necessarily serve us best when we let it impact our relationships. So some of you may have kind of witnessed this kind of scenario, because I sure have, and I'm sure that Rashay might be able to kind of echo this in the chat as well, is when you're sometimes out for dinner, you go out for dinner with somebody, you go to a restaurant that you might have booked, and you're right, okay, great, let's go out for dinner. And what do we tend to do sometimes when we kind of maybe ordered our food? We just kind of whilst we're having a conversation, we just kind of have a quick, general browse around the restaurant. And what I've found, and I'm probably guilty of doing this myself as well, is that you might see, let's say, two people who are at a table, and they come in, they sit down, they have a look at the menu, they have a little bit of conversation. The waiting staff come over and actually take their order. And once they have taken their order, they might have a little bit of a conversation, but then there'll probably be a point in time whereby one of those individuals actually takes out their smartphone, maybe to check something, maybe they've had a notification through, whatever it might be. And then once that person does it, then the other person will take out their smartphone to check what's going on their phone as well. And before you know it, both of those individuals who have come out to maybe kind of have a conversation and kind of speak about different things in person, are both kind of just head down straight into their smartphones. And that's something which can maybe impact a relationship. But again, that's kind of that's something that's rather subjective as well. But when it comes to all these kind of factors in terms of where technology doesn't really serve us, we are now, over time, we are becoming more and more aware of these factors in terms of we're able to catch ourselves when technology is not kind of best serving us and it's providing us the least amount of value. You can see here that nearly 30%, nearly 30% of adults across EMEA, so that's Europe, Middle East, and Africa, are concerned about the negative impacts of their own technology usage. So they're concerned about their habits, their behaviors that they have with these devices that they pretty much use every single day. Now you can also see that nearly half of those adults across Europe, Middle East, and Africa would like help in changing or improving at least one technology behavior out there. So that's kind of good food for thought. Think that, okay, people out there, we are becoming more conscious. I'm sure some of you who are tuning in, if not many of you who are tuning in for this for this webinar session are kind of fall into these kind of brackets here, because you've actually come along and you're attending this webinar session on how to find your balance with technology as well. But again, this is something which, if we look at that kind of figure of 52%, you can also look at it from, I guess, the other aspect, which is that 48% of adults don't really want don't really want to change or improve their technology behavior and habits generally as well. So it's something which, as much as we are slowly becoming aware of it, some of us may not want to change our habits or don't know where to start sometimes as well. So it's very important, just first and foremost, to be aware, and that kind of goes in line with that digital well-being definition. We want to make sure that we are aware, and then as we come and have a look at some of the tips and tools going forward, we want to make sure that we feel that we are in control as well of our digital habits that we have as well. So the ideal kind of place and space that we want to kind of get to in terms of where technology provides us the most amount of value is where we are in control, not when smartphones or laptops or tablets or other devices are in control of us. It's when we are in control. So we can think, right, I can actually jump onto my smartphone whenever I want, but I can also just leave it in my pocket or just leave it in my bag whenever I want as well. We also want to make sure that when it comes to the usage of our devices, that we're being purposeful with it. We're using it and kind of thinking about certain different tasks. Some of those tasks you might have written down earlier on, and you might have kind of clarified them with kind of some of those tasks that add the most amount of value to your life, and some of those that add kind of the least amount of value to your life as well. But we want to be rather purposeful. So, okay, well, if I'm opening up the Maps app on my phone, what's the main reason for this? Right, I need to get driving directions to the airport. I need to get driving directions to here or there or whatever it might be. It's there to serve a purpose. And overall, what we want to do is we want to kind of create a net positive impact, because as much as we want to make sure that we're only using our devices, our smartphones or our laptops or tablets or whatever other devices that we have, there will be times where we're kind of just using it for things that don't necessarily serve us, for purposes that don't necessarily serve us. But overall, we want to feel that by having this device, we're creating a net positive impact off the back of that as well. So that's important to kind of be aware of. So with that in mind, what I want you to do is just kind of jot down some goals that you think are going to help you to achieve your balance. And these are kind of goals which you might think, well, okay, this is where I want to be. This is kind of maybe one of the reasons that I've kind of that I'm attending this this webinar session, is because I want to achieve this particular kind of balance. Do I want to, you can see some examples here on screen. So do I want to make sure that I'm spending more time with my family, spending more time with my friends? Is it the case of I want to have kind of higher efficiency and output at work? I want to be more productive. I want to use my time more wisely. I want to feel less scattered and more kind of focused as well, something that we'll speak about going forward as well. So feel free to kind of jot down these goals that you might have. Feel free to also share them into the chat, and I'd love to kind of read out some of yours as we go along as well. So with that in mind, let's have a check-in, see if there's any sort of questions at this stage. So I can't see any questions at this stage. If there are any questions, pop them into the chat, and either myself and or Rashane will be able to kind of provide our thoughts on those questions as we go along. And feel free to kind of comment as we're going along anyway as well into the live chat. So with that in mind, let's now have a look at some of these tips and tools that we can look to adopt, or definitely kind of consider, when it comes to achieving a better balance with technology for us. So when it comes to tips and tools on how do we achieve better balance with technology, the first place to start is our brains, our minds, right? Because that's where kind of all of these kind of these habits will be formed, essentially, that we're creating, and ones that we already have in place that maybe don't necessarily serve us perhaps as well. But it all starts in the mind. You can see here that our brains may try to take as many shortcuts as possible, and that kind of makes sense, right? So our brains are very much kind of memory optimizing machines, which are basically designed to use as much or as little effort as possible into certain tasks, especially if the tasks that you've done before, if the things that you've done before, it will create a mental shortcut so that we don't really have to think about it. It might be times whereby you might think one day, say for example, that you commute to work, and you might have some of those days. I know I've definitely caught myself doing this at times, and it's kind of a fun little thing to do. And you're trying to backtrack, whereby you kind of think, right, okay, well, you get to your workplace and you're like, well, how did I get here this morning? I didn't really think about anything. So basically, I kind of got up, got ready, showered up, had breakfast, either jumped in the car or jumped on public transport, and here I am. But you don't really remember that journey. And the reason why a lot of the times we don't tend to remember those kind of journeys is because it's become kind of second nature. We've got a shortcut that our brain uses. And it's like, right, yeah, you got to do this, 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 and this. And we don't actually have to use kind of our active part of our brain. It's more kind of done passively. It's like, right, yeah, we know instinctively how to do certain things. And this is our brain basically creating mental shortcuts. You can see how that kind of works here. So you have kind of like a stimulus, right? Okay, I need to wake up and go to work. You then have that kind of that shortcut loop of, right, I've done this before. Your brain thinks, right, I've done this before. So this is what you need to do. This is the process, getting ready and then heading out the door, having breakfast as well in between. And then that kind of causes that action of doing all of these kind of steps going forward as well. And this is something known as heuristic thinking. And the reason why our brains create these mental shortcuts is because it allows kind of more time and more space in our brains to kind of spend time kind of solving more complex problems or make more, I guess, more brain intensive judgments at times as well. So these shortcuts just become more kind of habitual as well. And that's kind of what we want to kind of create essentially with our relationships that we have with our devices as well, with the technology that's in our life. So, if you think about other mental shortcuts that we do tend to have, it might be, from the very moment that we actually wake up. So when we wake up, we're like, okay, I'm woken up. What's the next thing that we do tend to do? We go to the bathroom, we'll brush our teeth, and that's just what we tend to do because our brain's kind of been wired that way now because we've done it for such a long period of time. And this is all in a mental shortcut. So our brain's not really spending time focusing on us actually brushing our teeth. And this is what is something known as kind of cognitive laziness, where we're not being lazy or anything like that. Our brain's just being lazy because it's thinking, right, I need to keep my brain space open for anything kind of more kind of, I guess, labor intensive, something that's going to be something which I might need to spend a little bit more time thinking about. So something as, I guess, what the brain would now classify as kind of mundane, like brushing your teeth, or when you're kind of picking which socks to wear on a day and just wearing your socks, tying up your shoelaces, those kind of things. That is where your brain has kind of created these kind of mental shortcuts, and we all have them in general over time. So that's something just to kind of be aware of there. When it comes to kind of these mental shortcuts. So what we want to do is we want to use this information that we now know to our benefit and kind of hopefully eventually create mental shortcuts for having the right kind of balance with the technology that exists in our lives. So some tips and tools that can help us to create that kind of balance for us is to create good routines, be more in control, make space for screen-free time, and be more focused at work. So these are kind of just various kind of overview headings because they're not really tips and tools there and then. We're going to be just kind of diving into each one of these in turn, kicking off with creating good routines. So in terms of creating good routines, we want a few things that we can consider. And remember, the reason why I say consider and not say, right, you need to do this or you need to do that. It's because, again, it might be kind of overwhelm on our brain to think, oh, I need to do all of this, I need to do all of that. Just to kind of consider, you might kind of adopt and implement one or two of these, but feel free to kind of jot as many of these tips and tools down as you feel is required for you. So one of the things that you can do is maybe observe your habits. So a lot of kind of the tools out there. So depending on which sort of, let's say, smartphone device that you use. So if you have an Android device, you can actually go into the digital well-being settings. Alternatively, if you have an iOS device, you can actually go into the screen time settings, and you can actually find out information such as how many pickups have you had of your smartphone today. So you can find that kind of information out. So you can observe your habits. However, what I would say with something like pickups, how many times are you opening your phone? If that's the device that you're observing your habits on, rather than actually using that tool to determine how many times you're picking up your phone, what you can do is just kind of create on just simply on a pen and paper, just create a tally. So every time that you pick up your phone, you just tally that up. And then just find out how many times that you actually use that device. So observe your habits. You don't need to look to change anything just yet, but observe it, because once you've done that, you can then look to change things. So then you can kind of use kind of the digital well-being screen time settings respectively to limit certain app usage. So if you use an app which you feel is not really adding that much value to your life, then you can actually limit that. So you're only spending a certain amount of time, certain amount of minutes per day that you've allocated for yourself. Maybe you allow yourself a little bit more time over the weekends or when you're not working, perhaps, as well. Another kind of good tip for kind of creating a good routine is also do some spring cleaning. So the devices that you do have, maybe get rid of apps, maybe get rid of kind of software that you have which you don't even use, which is not really kind of in line with you being purposeful with that device as well. Maybe you downloaded it a while ago and you just thought, it's there now. Just do a bit of a spring clean at times, just to kind of tidy things up. I think that's quite useful to kind of consider there as well. In terms of kind of being more in control of your devices, because we want to have control. We don't want the devices kind of technology to kind of control us. We want to make sure that we have kind of full kind of autonomy and control. There is we can put our devices to bed. So pretty much most smartphone devices out there, they have a do not disturb mode that we can put our phones in. So even if we are charging our smartphone beside our pillow, or we've got kind of a bedside table that we're charging it on, if we put it in do not disturb mode, we're not going to be getting kind of notifications that are going to be kind of disrupting our sleep and waking us up. Now, we can also make sure that we are getting important either notifications or phone calls that come through. If you're getting certain phone calls from certain members of your family or certain friends, you know, right, okay, well, this must be important if they're ringing at this time in the evening. So you can actually set those kind of exceptions up as well when you set a do not disturb mode going forward as well. You can use your voice to control usage as well. So most of the time nowadays, there's a lot of kind of voice devices out there. So you've got kind of the Google Nest devices, which you can have all around your home, even in kind of the kitchen. I know I use my device in the kitchen just to set things like timers for the oven, or if I'm cooking something, I can just kind of set timers. It will tell me, right, okay, I need to do this or I need to do that when I'm cooking something or or I'm kind of trying out a recipe that I found online. You can even just do it if you're just looking to find out what the time is, and you're working somewhere where you've got a voice enabled device like a Google Nest or an Alexa device. Then you can just ask it, well, what is the time, for example, or what's the temperature, or what's the answer to this question, what's the answer to this calculation that I need to make as well. And that again will kind of reduce your usage of some of the other devices that you have as well. Think about kind of using meditation apps as well. So there's a lot of kind of meditation apps out there. You've also got a Google Chrome extension that you can use and check out, which is called Mindful Break, which is really useful. So whilst you're kind of online, whilst you're using something like Google Chrome, you can actually take kind of one of those mindful breaks and just kind of focus on a little bit more kind of breath work, just to kind of center you and just think, right, okay, well, let me, rather than just kind of continuing on using all this technology in the day, let me just take kind of a step back and a bit of a breather as well. So there's a lot of kind of meditation apps out there. So for me, I've used quite a few out there. There's some which are kind of available for free. Some are they're free, but then also have a paid version as well. And then some are just straight kind of paid. So I've used apps out there such as the likes of Insight Timer, and also apps like the likes of Calm as well. So I'm sure there might be other meditation apps that you might be using out there as well. But it's just kind of, again, just helping us to be more aware as well and kind of be more grounded in terms of our kind of technology and usage. And when it comes to meditation, mindfulness apps, that is something which helps our general well-being in general as well. So as well as assisting with our digital well-being, it can assist us generally with our well-being as a whole as well. Now, in terms of kind of making space for some tech-free time, we want to make sure that we are being present with others. So, right, that could just be something as simple as, right, I am not going to be taking my phone out of my pocket all night, even though I've gone for dinner with a friend. We can look to kind of enjoy the gift of JOMO. This is something which I've kind of done over the last couple of years, and I've kind of really enjoyed it as well. So you might have heard of the phrase of FOMO, which stands for fear of missing out. So the gift of JOMO is the joy of missing out. And I find this quite sort of, I find this really kind of refreshing, because I know that after kind of the pandemic and kind of going to kind of a social gathering for the first time, I actually found myself speaking to individuals and actually learning something new about what's been going on in their life, without me kind of constantly being on social media and kind of finding out, what are their kind of movements, what are their footsteps, where are they going, where they've been, wherever they've been away on holiday, all these kind of information. They're able to kind of tell me their story as well. So I'm enjoying that aspect as well. So that's something to kind of consider there as well. And also, when we kind of do away with our tech at times, that can really help us get our creative juices flowing as well. We can let our mind wander. So if we have kind of if our mind is kind of in that kind of problem solving kind of state, and we're kind of hitting a brick wall, sometimes it's kind of nice, right? Okay, let's put away the phone, let's put away the laptop, any other technology device that we have with us, and let's just let our mind wander and see what we come up with sometimes as well. In that respect. So that's something to consider as well. Some other tips and tools, and also some other tips and tools include being more focused at work. So managing our notifications, so we can turn off notifications for apps that we don't really need notifications for at all. So we can kind of turn them off. And also what we can do is we can actually schedule for certain notifications, or schedule for your phone notifications only to come on at a particular time. So let's say you finish work at 5 p.m. That's when you start getting phone notifications coming through. Other than that, throughout the day, you won't get them, because you've set it like that in your phone as well. Putting your phone out of sight, out of mind. That's something that could be useful for you as well. I know some people have kind of gone to, I guess, more drastic measures and made sure that it's in another room. Some people also kind of maybe locked their phone in a desk drawer, giving that key to another co-worker, so that they're not tempted to kind of go on their phone or go on their other devices as well. And then also, when it comes to working, we also want to make sure that we have a clear kind of distinction between, right, this is our work time and this is our personal time, where we're away from work, where we're able to disconnect. And especially if we're kind of going away for a considerable period of time, then we can set things like out of offices, set an out of office message saying, right, okay, well, I'll reply to you on my return, but this is the message that you've got here. And that kind of sets and creates clear boundaries as well going forward. So that's kind of some of the tips and tools that we've kind of identified here. You might have more. If there are any more, if there's ones which you think are that are kind of conducive and working for you, feel free to kind of share them in the chat. I'm sure other people who are tuned in for this webinar session, myself and Rashane included, might be able to kind of pick up other tips and tools as well. So feel free to kind of share them in the chat as we go along. So with that in mind, let's have a check-in, see if there's any sort of comments or questions. So we've got a question, I believe, from Cornelius, who's asked, I'm an avid reader and I mainly use my laptop to read stories online. I spend more than 3/4 of my day on the computer reading. How do I reduce my usage? So yeah, that's quite an interesting question there, Cornelius. And it's not a case of, I think first and foremost, when it comes to what you're doing in terms of reading stories online, if that, first of all, you need to identify what we looked at in the kind of the first part of this webinar session. Is that adding value to your life? If it is, great, that's fine. Then you want to kind of consider, well, why do I want to reduce my usage? Okay, it's a case of kind of the amount of time that you're spending on the screen. Maybe then you can kind of set yourself boundaries in terms of, right, okay, well, with my laptop usage, I make sure that I set kind of clear boundaries in terms of, right, this is when I'm reading from, and this is when I'm reading till. And then what you can do is you can create kind of a bit of a routine whereby you think, right, okay, well, it's 6 p.m. in the evening, I will be closing my laptop down now. And you actually go through a whole process. You click close down. And on a load of laptops as well, you can actually create and kind of select different shutdown chimes. And that kind of shutdown chime that you hear when your laptop's closing down will be kind of that trigger for you to think, right, okay, that's the end of me reading for today going forward as well. So again, so there's all these different kind of variables there, Cornelius, in terms of that for you. But yeah, first and foremost, at the core, it's very much kind of identifying, well, is it kind of adding value to your life? If it isn't, well, maybe some of those tips and tools that we spoke about might kind of come to the fore as well. So thank you very much for that question there. If there are any further questions, feel free to kind of let me know your thoughts in the chat as we go along. So let's kind of round off this session looking at how we can apply these tips and tools that we've just gone through, because the more that we apply these tips and tools, we will start to form healthy habits. So when it comes to making these changes and implementing some of these tips and tools, we want to start small to change habits. This really kind of always reminds me, this being on this kind of slide, with this phrase of start small to change habits, it always reminds me of this phrase that someone told me years ago, which is that Rome wasn't built in a day. You might have heard of that, which I'd heard of as a phrase, a long time ago. But someone mentioned this to me. Rome wasn't built in a day, but bricks were laid every hour, which is something that really kind of stuck with me there. So if we make these kind of small changes, that's something that will kind of develop into something greater. And then once we actually make these small changes, that develops into something larger. And the more times that we do these kind of small changes that kind of make kind of go into this kind of larger kind of way of action that we do, or larger kind of way of thinking that we have, that is starting to kind of form a habit. I think it's been kind of estimated. I think the last time I kind of checked different kind of articles that I read online previously, is that I think it takes anywhere between kind of 30 and 60 days to form a habit. Now it might take longer, it might take shorter for you as well. So again, that's something rather subjective as well. So with that in mind, what I want you to do is I want you to kind of jot down kind of three of those tips and tools that you're going to be maybe implementing. You might have jotted, more of them down as well. But what you want to do is these tips and tools that you've jotted down in the previous section, think about how you're going to align them to your goals that we created in the first and kind of earlier part of this webinar session. So let's have a look at some examples here. So if you said that you wanted to have kind of higher efficiency and higher output at work, then a few kind of steps that you can maybe implement could be to practice deep work when writing reports. So deep work is a really interesting concept, which I learned about a couple of years ago when I read the book called Deep Work by an American professor called Cal Newport. And it just kind of, it talks about how you can kind of segment your working day into kind of 20 or 25-minute working bursts. And in between those bursts, you have a few minutes where you're able to just kind of have a bit of downtime. And then you go back into kind of focused work as well. You set yourself timers. And at the end of kind of a handful of those kind of working periods, you then take a longer break for, let's say, an hour. And that's something that can be really useful. So definitely kind of check that out. You might kind of find information about deep work on YouTube as well. There's also a really interesting book that I read called Digital Minimalism, which was also written by Cal Newport. That might be of interest to you to kind of consider, especially because that kind of ties into what we're speaking about with this topic and finding your balance with technology as well. And just kind of being aware of the fact of technology is something which is there, it's here in our lives, but we want to make sure that we've got kind of clear boundaries with it. We're not kind of using all the time, but we're not going the other way and not using it at all. We want to make sure that we're in that happy medium spot as well. So you can see some other kind of tips that this person, as an example, to get more higher efficiency at work is that they're going to be using Do Not Disturb to be more focused during work times. And Do Not Disturb will include kind of cutting down on the amount of notification that they get and unnecessary notifications, and also disconnecting when needed from certain apps to help them focus. Now, another example is if somebody is looking to spend more time with their family, they can be more present with others during meal times. So that can include kind of implementing screen-free meal times as well, so that they can spend more time with their family. So I know some people have done this in the past, whereby let's say a family is coming downstairs to eat. Everybody must leave their phone upstairs in their room and on silent. Maybe they just have kind of one phone in the next room in case there's something urgent, that a phone call comes through, for example. But other than that, everybody leaves the phone upstairs, or everybody leaves their phone in a particular bowl, or just kind of an area where they won't be disturbed whilst they're having dinner. And that kind of helps with being more present and spending more time with family as well, and just kind of giving the gift of JOMO as well on the next holiday. And that can be implementing things such as your out of office reply and sticking to that as well. So even if you do get emails coming through, sticking to that that out of office and not replying, and setting those clear boundaries with people who may want to get in touch with you because you said, no, I'm away. So if you want to get in touch with me, either redirect your message to somebody else, like I mentioned in my out of office, or I will respond to you upon my return as well. So what I want you to do is feel free, if you're comfortable to do so, to kind of share one commitment with the group in terms of what you are hopefully going to do at the end of this session, what you're going to hopefully take away in terms of kind of proactivity, right? Now, in terms of mastering your commitments, in terms of what you're going to be doing, you want to kind of be more aware of kind of things that trigger negative behaviors. And when I say negative, I don't really like the word negative, just by its very nature. So just be aware of kind of things that trigger behaviors, which technology behaviors, which don't add value or add the least amount of value to your life. Just be aware of that fact and kind of catch yourself in those moments. And you will do naturally more and more. You can also kind of find ways to reward yourselves for kind of those positive behaviors where technology is adding value to your life. And also when you're implementing some of those tips and tools that we spoke about earlier as well, you can look to kind of work hard to change your routine. That's something which very much is a given as well. We want to, the more that we do something, the more that we'll look to kind of create a habit out of it, and expect change to be gradual, but also celebrate the small wins as well. So that's what we've kind of covered today, kind of understanding what we mean by digital well-being, reflecting upon usage for you. Where does technology add the most amount of value? Where does it add the least amount of value? Kind of getting that kind of clarity through contrast as well. We looked at some of the tips and tools for achieving a better balance in general. And then we've looked at how to apply those tips and tools so that we can then hopefully go ahead and create healthy habits as well. So with that in mind, let's have a check-in, see if there's any kind of final questions that are coming in, which I can't see any. So with that in mind, I'll kind of roll into your next steps. So one of your next steps, be sure to check out the Google Digital Garage website, provided that it's within the space of you using your technology devices. Check out the Google Digital Garage website, have a look at some of the other webinar sessions that we run through the live training tab that might be of use for you, that might be kind of relevant. Remember, they are available for you to attend at no charge with the webinars. And also, if you are based in the UK, check out some of the in-person events that we are running as well. that you can sign up for and attend at no charge as well. So definitely kind of check that out. Also check out the online courses section of the Google Digital Garage website. Remember, it's the Fundamentals of Digital Marketing course, which is the course that upon completion, you will actually receive an added bonus of receiving a certificate from Google at no charge as well. So definitely check out all the resources on the Google Digital Garage website when you get a moment. So with that in mind, I hope that you found this session useful. If you did, both myself and Roshane would appreciate a little bit of feedback. We've got a feedback form link, which is on screen as well. So with that in mind, I want to say a massive thank you to Roshane for being a wonderful chat moderator. Feel free to show your appreciation for Roshane in the live chat down below. And thank you all for tuning into this Google Digital Garage webinar session. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you. Bye.